In a world that can be challenging and at times unpredictable, it's hard to find moments to focus on what you need. Join Stephanie James on The Spark as she guides you to use your inner flame to ignite your best life. As a best-selling author, psychotherapist, transformational life coach, and international show host, Stephanie is dedicated to helping you create a life that takes you, your goals, and your passions to the next level, so you can live a life that is fully lit up and fully alive. She believes that your life is meant to be a beautiful expression of the things that light you up. That by living your dreams, you give permission to others to do the same. Are you ready to feel alive and inspired to fuel your dreams and put a fire behind your desires? Let's ignite a spark in one another that will illuminate the world. The Spark, with your host, Stephanie James, starts now.
Welcome to The Spark. I'm your host, Stephanie James. Thank you so much for joining us. I am absolutely thrilled. My guest today is Tia Graham. And Tia Graham is the founder of Arrive at Happy. And I absolutely love her title, Certified Chief Happiness Officer. And I just want to welcome you to the show, Tia. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
I am as well. Definitely already resonance with you. And I do have to just ask you here at first, tell me about your title, because that is one of the most awesome titles I've heard.
Yes, thank you. So along my journey, my background is in sales and marketing. I led sales and marketing teams for the hotel industry in the US and Europe. And I started my company, Arrive at Happy, in 2017 and have been educating myself with the science of happiness and neuroscience. I became a certified coach. And there's this company in Denmark called Woohoo Inc. And they've been doing happiness work with organizations for 2 decades. The Scandinavians are light years ahead when it comes to happiness and happiness at work. And the founder, Alexander, I've just been following him on LinkedIn and social media. And he was announcing this program where you could become a certified chief happiness officer for happiness at work. And so I reached out, signed up, and in 2019 went over and spent a week in Copenhagen. There were 24 of us from, I think, 14 different countries, all, basically becoming certified. And so what it is a understanding and knowledge and a framework for how CEOs, executives, leaders, managers, supervisors, anyone leading human beings, how they can increase the experienced happiness, the positive emotions that people feel while they're working. And so that's a big pillar of work that I do, is I teach leaders how to increase not only their happiness, but also the happiness of their employees. And so that's what that certification is. It's using positive psychology, but it's really around how you can have people feel happier while they're working.
I can only imagine the research and results that you have gotten about why this is such an effective thing, why this is so important in the workplace and in our lives.
Yes.
I can remember back in, I guess it was 1999 when Marty Seligman, did all the
just heard him speak this weekend. Oh my gosh. Yes.
And he changed as really, he's like the father of positive psychology, right?
Yes. And he's almost 80. It's incredible. The ripple effect. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me about you. You were just saying you saw him this weekend.
Yes. So every single year, it paused a couple of years because of COVID, but there's an annual World Happiness Summit at the University of Miami. And I actually gave a talk there, but it's 3 days of positive psychologists and neuroscientists and business leaders and all of these people that are in the movement of bringing the science of happiness to the world, right? To business, to education, and then for individuals as well. So of course, I've always heard about him. I've read so many of his books, and it was really surreal to hear him talk.
Yeah, I imagine, because I imagine he lives it. He doesn't just know it.
Yeah. And he has such a his perspective, because he's been studying happiness for over 30 years, and he said, he's like, when I started, the only thing we were researching was really, really, really unhappy people, as a group of psychologists, thousands of psychologists, schizophrenia, depression, bipolar, which of course that's a very vital research. But, and people told him, you can't measure happiness. You can't research happiness. But of course, now we know you absolutely can.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that, there really is something to that. It's like what we focus on expands. It's a principle in physics. So when we think about when psychology was just focusing on the symptoms of what was wrong, we were missing the mark in so many ways, because it's like, what cultivates resiliency and grit? How do we cultivate courage or
and optimism and happiness, hope, all these things that you can grow. Yeah. He was talking a lot about agency, human agency. And it was fascinating because he was saying he was going through these periods of time in history where humans believed that they had agency, that they could affect change in the world. And during those periods is when there was huge growth, both by thought, with business, in art. And then there were periods of life where the belief was everything is in God's hands and we don't have agency. And that's when there wasn't a lot of human advancement. So our belief, affects the world. Of course, we were talking about environmentalism and all these different, what the world needs. But just that piece, that knowing that we have impact, we all, the 7 billion of us, we all have impact, and we can make the world, we can make our lives better, and we can make the world better. So he gave a lot of hope.
Yes. Yeah. How wonderful. Well, and so how did I have to ask you, because you're very radiant and you just have this wonderful energy. And I'm really curious about your own journey. Mm-hmm. Were you always this bubbly, happy soul, or tell me a little bit about your own happiness journey?
Yeah. So happiness is partly genetic. Some people are more, of course, it's a spectrum. So I definitely was born with a lot of happy genes, as a kid, bubbly and happy-go-lucky. But like probably every other beautiful human being listening, I've had very challenging times and then also good times. I say sort of the peaks and valleys of life. When I was an early adolescent, my parents went through a very difficult separation and divorce. And my dad was really unhappy for several years. And he, before this, was a very happy-go-lucky. He got a lot of happy genes too, I think. So it was pretty scary watching his happiness dwindle and his light getting smaller and smaller. But I saw him after a few years make the conscious choice. And he actually told me he was making this choice, that he's not going to have another bad year, that he's going to choose happiness. He's going to choose resilience. So I learned, I think age 12, that happiness is a choice. It takes work, it takes effort, but it's something you choose, because I saw my dad choose it. But I've gone through different periods of life where I felt lost and not inspired. And then I found myself again. And, but I always have, intentionally designed my life. Like when I'm going through periods of really unhappiness, I have this compass inside that I know what happiness and joy and contentment and purpose feels like. So when I'm going through really tough periods or low periods, I know, okay, I want to get back there. I don't want to stay here. Some obviously, depending what's going on, it takes longer. But so, and then, so in terms of my journey, basically I worked in the hotel industry. I grew up in Canada. I got really sick of the cold, and my mom's American. So thankfully I didn't have to stay in the cold Canada. And I moved to the Hawaiian Islands when I was 20 years old, and switched university degrees, and I started studying tourism. And so for 14 years, I led sales and marketing teams in the Hawaiian Islands. I was in New York City, in Istanbul, Turkey, and then in Los Angeles. And I say I was a happy workaholic. I loved my work. I got paid to travel, and I lived in all these amazing places. And the catalyst to create Arrive at Happy was when I went back to work, I was the director of sales and marketing for this hotel in Los Angeles called the London West Hollywood. And I had a 2-year-old little girl, my older daughter named Mackenzie. And then I had my second daughter, Audrey. So I was back at work with a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old. And of course, was exhausted and stressed and overwhelmed and tired. And I had work guilt, mom guilt, marriage. I mean, just so much guilt. I was sad. I was really unhappy during this period. And I'd always had this idea to create a happiness company because people would ask me, how do I stay so happy? And so during this really low period, I actually hired a coach. One of my friends recommended a coach, and I started researching happiness for myself. And then that's how I discovered the science of happiness. And basically I've been on this journey and this quest, and then have created a company from it. But that's I sort of always had it within me. And the catalyst was, I say Audrey, I guess both my girls, but it was that second baby that was like, okay, this executive career and everything I'm doing, it's too much and it's not fun. My life circumstances had changed so much. And I just felt like I was missing out so much on my daughter's lives by, you spend a lot of time in hotels. So being a director of sales and marketing, you need to be there a lot. I was managing a big team. So that's how I got to creating Arrive at Happy.
Wow, what an amazing journey that you've been on, and I think that's really true. I mean, sometimes people, when they witness people like you that are really happy and so optimistic and joyful, they're like, well, she's never had anything, go wrong in her life. And it's like, we're all in this human experience.
Yes.
So nobody gets out of it unscathed. And yet I love this thing, this lesson that you learned from your father around happiness being a choice.
Yes.
Can you talk more about that?
Yes. Yes. So, for several years, he physically, emotionally, psychologically, he's not a very spiritual guy, but I'll say spiritually also, it was just, he was shrinking. And it was really terrifying because I remember, because he'd always been this bright, happy go lucky, light, fun guy. And I remember thinking, is this my new dad? Is this how he's going to be? Which of course was terrifying. And the separation and divorce were already enough, rocking the world that I had known. And just the way he moved through life, everything was, I didn't know at the time, but I'm pretty sure he was depressed. I don't think I put that word when I was 11, like my dad's depressed. I just remember thinking he's not happy. And so he told me, one day, and actually it was on his birthday, he said, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 bad years. I've had these, 2 really, really bad years. And I woke up this morning and I decided I'm not going to have another bad year. And I saw, now that I know, because I know so much about the science of happiness, but he did these little rituals. So there was a few different songs that he would always play. I think it's, I forget the name of the artist, but the song is I Can See Clearly Now. And he would play that, like, I can see clear. I can just hear it. Yep, he would play that a lot. He would, and before that, he would definitely wasn't playing that. Spending more time with friends, and doing more fun activities with us. And he didn't hire, I know he didn't hire like a coach or a therapist or anything, but it was definitely a lot of mindset work that he was working on. And, so witnessing that and having him tell me that, when I was living in Calgary, Alberta, and I was lost and I was uninspired and I didn't know what, when I was sort of 18, 19, 20. And I remember, sitting in my little ugly studio apartment, sitting down being like, okay, this is not good enough. Like life has got to be better than this. And saying, okay, I need to change. I need to do something different so that I feel excited, so that I feel joyous, so that I feel alive, so that I'm moving forward, and that first big conscious choice of me choosing happiness was I went and did an internship on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. And I was actually a counselor with kids, and, there's bottlenose dolphins. Hilton Head is so beautiful. And I did that for 3 months and I went back to Calgary. It's minus 30 degrees. And I'm like, okay, I'm still back here. This is not good. And so that's when I, made the conscious decision, and I actually applied and, transferred to the University of Hawaii. But so sort of throughout life, when I've found myself in uninspired, I don't feel that vitality, that, energy of, and I'm just in awe and I'm excited, when I wake up in the morning, that's that compass inside that I'm connected to. That's, I need to make changes, and over the last, of course, over COVID, we've all been going through this. And, now a lot of the challenges I'm facing are actually, it comes with parenting, excuse me. And so I look for resources and support and, spirituality to help me, but for everyone listening, you said it, there's no such thing as always being happy. There's no such thing. That is not the human experience. So there's a misconception and myth out there that there's some people that are always happy. I'm a happiness expert, and no, that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, I just think that is one of the essential messages. And so yes, if we feel some of those negative feelings, I think sometimes what can happen is people actually, they exacerbate their emotional negative state because they're mad that they're mad, or they're yes, sad that they're sad, or they feel yes, anxious about being anxious.
Yes. Yes. So there's two levels of suffering. And the first is, something is, there's a horrific war happening right now, right? So are people feeling anxious for that? Yes, of course, or fearful, and all of these different, and I actually call them painful. It's the reframe for me has been not negative, but they're painful, because negative, you think it's bad, right? So they're painful, or maybe they're unpleasant, but a lot of cases they're painful. Then the second type of suffering is that you are angry or upset at yourself for feeling those. But that second one is actually our choice. So by just knowing that there are these two levels of suffering, and the first one is the human experience, and the second part is, instead of being mad or having the expectation, so much of our unhappiness comes from expectations, that we shouldn't feel that. We shouldn't feel anxious. We shouldn't feel angry. We shouldn't. No, you're a human. You should feel all of these. But then and why I'm really obsessed with the science of happiness is having healthy coping mechanisms, having healthy mindset tools, knowing how to move through those periods of your life where you are not coping with them in a negative way, or not pushing them away and pretending they're not there. That's really, I think, a transformation, and I'm a journeyer, just like everyone else listening, of over time, and change is difficult over time, having healthy ways to move through them, because humans are really, really resilient. We can get through a lot.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited. We need to take a break, but when we come back, I want to hear more about just some of the coping strategies that people can use. And then we'll be talking later about why happiness is so important as being a leader and in business. Why does happiness matter? So all that and much more when we return. So stay tuned. Welcome back to The Spark. So thrilled to have you here with us. And, I just am so taken by this conversation I'm having with Tia Graham, because it deals with something that I think drives so much of our behavior. It drives so much of media. It drives so much of our lives, is this kind of quest for happiness. Mm-hmm. And I think, Tia, one of the questions I wanted to ask you too, as we got back, is, what do you consider the definition of happiness? Because as we know, happiness is an emotion, it comes and goes. But what for you is your sense of that definition?
Yeah. So for me, actually, happiness is not an emotion. That there are, in the English language, there's probably 80 or so pleasant, feel-good emotions that we love to feel. And then I'll come to the definition. And then there's another 80 or so of those painful, unpleasant emotions. So when we feel happy is when we're feeling love, or we're feeling joy, or we're feeling serenity, or amusement when we're laughing, right? All of these beautiful emotions. So for me, my personal definition is it's having a commitment to purpose and to joy. And it's also accepting the peaks and valleys of life. That's my own personal, and it might change over time, but that's sort of what my guiding light. Because everything I teach is based on the science of happiness and neuroscience. Positive psychologists, the definition is that there are these two forms of happiness. There's hedonic, which is pleasure, right? So when you're sitting with a glass of wine with a friend you haven't seen, and of course, well, that also could be a little. You write something pleasurable, you're on vacation, have all of these things, which that's a part of it. But then there's also eudaimoc, which is the meaning and purpose. So that might be, your career, or raising children, or the community work that you do. And then there's this third part, which is experiences. You might, go on a helicopter ride. It's not super pleasurable for you. You might actually be scared. It's not that it's full of meaning, but experiences actually make our lives really rich too. So from a scientific perspective, those are sort of the three, think of like a stool, like the pillars that support it. But, and also, what I've learned over the last 5 years in constantly studying this is that a huge, huge piece of happiness is how we deal with our unhappiness, which is, I know, what we were talking about earlier, because there are healthy ways and unhealthy ways. And I sometimes don't deal with it in the best way, as like I said, a fellow journeyer. But when you can, gosh, it makes your life a lot wiser, I guess is the word that comes to mind.
Well, and more peaceful, I imagine as well. Yes. I think that's something that I find I talk to my clients a lot about, whether it's my coaching clients or, my psychotherapy clients. This, like we have these, number one, lots of times these external programs for happiness.
Yes.
So it's like happiness feels like it's something that we have to achieve or we have to get. And, with you talking about happiness being a choice and the way that we deal with other emotions that come up, it's an internal process, if we can move to that internal place.
Yeah.
And so it's not about being up here the whole time.
No.
Like we always have to be with a big smile on our face and be very, very happy. It's actually in the way we are navigating life, it sounds like.
Yes. And really, to me, happiness, it's a verb. It is something that you do. I mean, we have anywhere between 30 to 60,000 thoughts a day, and we make something like 32,000 decisions a day, right? So from the one decision is the time, what time you go to bed is a crucial decision to our happiness. Sleep and happiness is so connected. So the amazing thing is that we know actions and decisions that can increase those pleasant emotions, and then actions and the decisions that decrease it. And so just by having that knowledge, and over time, hopefully we all live to be very old, over time, cultivating more and more of those habits that support those wonderful feelings, then, the baseline that you have will continually, your happiness baseline will continually grow. But yes, it is internal. No one can give this to you, by a title or a house or a car, whatever, all of these things in life. It's coming from inside, the intention and the action.
So what do we do then when we find ourselves in one of those life situations where we're not feeling so happy? And we were talking before break, about, okay, there's some strategies we can use, or there's some things when we find ourselves amidst these darker emotions, these more, what do we want to say? Some people might say like we're dealing with our shadow side, or
you're going through pain. Yes, something like
going through pain
is painful. Yes, absolutely. So the first is the more emotional granularity you have, that is a huge support tool. So there's wonderful, actually, Brene Brown's latest book called Atlas of the Heart that's a perfect example of, it's a book full of all of these different human emotions. So where instead of, you might say, I'm anxious, you might actually be a little bit disappointed. You might also be languishing a little bit. That's Adam Grant's new TED Talk, and you might be a little bit fearful, for example. So the more words we can put to these, and it's not just, sad, angry, unhappy, right? So that's really, really key, and verbalizing it. The research shows that, and this is, your work and obviously coaching work and therapists and everything, is when you're going through it, is to talk to someone, whether you hire someone or whether it's a friend or family member. These emotions are like water. You don't want to block them in behind a dam. They need to flow through you. You need to move through them. So talking with someone, also writing, journaling. So when you're going through this, even if you write 20 minutes a day for 3 days about what's going on in your physical body, your mind, your spirit, your soul, your, the thoughts, just continuously writing. Think about that's another way that it's coming out. So also there's this idea of unselfing. So when we're going through a lot of pain, is a lot of the things we do to be happy are things we do for ourselves, which is selfing. Okay. I learned this from Megan McDowell, who's with the Whole Being Institute. Unselfing, there's 2 ways you can do this. One is through human connection. So realizing and really connecting to, you are never alone. Like all 7 billion of us, we are connected every single day. So leaning into the people that can help you as you're going through this time, and then also you helping people. One of the best things you can do when you're going through pain is actually to help others, whether it's someone, a friend, family, charity, whatever, but just connecting to that giant web of humanity is very, very healthy when you're going through pain. And then also spirituality. So this is this, piece of letting go, whether it's through prayer, through your religious practice, through meditation. But it's this releasing of, I'm thinking something like one of the most horrible things that could probably happen to a human being is the loss of a loved one, and so just, of course, you're going to be crying, you're going to be having all these flood of emotions, but that the human connection piece and spirituality are 2 ways to unself. And so there's a lot of others, but I'll share one other. Another really powerful tool is recognizing and listening to your thoughts. And so let's say you have just lost a job, right? Your thoughts might say something like, you are a loser, you are not going to be successful in life, you failed, and so that's this catastrophizing, right? So an event has happened and then you're projecting it, you are never going to get a good job. No one's going to want to hire you. You seem like a loser to your wife or your husband, all of these thoughts, right? So if you can slow down, this is where meditation or just, finding quiet time, journaling of what are my thoughts saying, and asking yourself, is this thought true? Because a lot of times they're not true. Our brain has a negativity bias and doesn't, so is it true? And right there, a lot of it's going to be like, no, are you unhireable for the rest of your life? That's a thought you're going to be having, but you say, no, that's actually not a true thought. If there is a true thought, then it's okay. What can I do about it? If it's, you're in a financial crush, right? Okay, that's a true thought. Okay, what could I do about it? And then it's about action. And so the as if principle, which is really powerful, is if you're feeling this, Kate, like in this example, maybe like you just lost a job and you're feeling like a loser, right? Your brain and everything is telling you, yeah, I am not successful right now. A lot of people wait for inspiration to then take action. And what Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, he's the professor who taught happiness at Harvard for years. Now he has his own school, and he just announced he's going to have a master's program in happiness studies. Anyway, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar says it's action before inspiration. So when you're feeling, you're going through this really challenging period, even if you don't feel fantastic, act like it. And what's going to happen is, so you might, let's say you've lost a job, and action might look like, okay, I am going to go apply for 7 jobs today, even though I feel like a total loser. I am going to, share something on my LinkedIn. I'm going to make some phone calls to some people, some connections. And what's going to happen is your brain is going to see you taking this action, and your brain is going to say, she's feeling confident. Oh, she's not a loser. Look what she's doing. And you're going to get inspiration from that. So those are all research-based, healthy ways to move through it. But the last thing I'll say is, it's not a sprint. Depending on what's going on, you do need to move through your pain. You don't want to, if you lose someone, it's not like, the next day you're expected. No, of course, you need to take time to process and be still and move through it with the time that you need.
Well, and it sounds like, the important piece, like you could acknowledge how you feel, you can feel it, and you're watching what are those messages coming through our thoughts.
Yes.
So that we're not getting attached to those as our big T truth.
Yes. Yes. Because we think our thoughts are reality. Right.
Yeah. And they're just thoughts. Exactly.
Just thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. So many awesome, amazing, just suggestions, golden nuggets. I love all these different ways that we can realize. I love the nuancing too, you were talking about in Brene Brown's book.
Yes.
Yes. That instead of just making this blank statement, just like I can remember, this is way back when I worked for the mental health center, probably in 95, but where we would have these thermometers and then we'd have the clients fill it in, so it wasn't just I'm happy or I feel rage.
Right.
It's all the little nuances in between, feeling aggravated or frustrated, or then moving to angry or furious. And there's all these different variations. Yes.
Yeah. And also just how we show up for others. Cause the number one predictor of happiness is human connection.
Love that. So,
even just knowing how do I show up compassionate and what does empathy look like? Cause those are very different and how, and I can't help but think of the Dalai Lama also when it comes to happiness of, he says so much of a human suffering comes from thinking too much about ourselves. So there's those thoughts again, right? If we can turn our attention out and think about others, just by doing a little bit more of that, even if it's your sister or a neighbor, your kid, whoever it is, just by doing that, then we can move away a little bit from the monkey brain that's always telling us all of these crazy thoughts, which sometimes you wish you could just turn off.
Right. Well, and I remember we were, as we were talking about Marty Seligman earlier, I remember something from, now I'm not remembering. It wasn't his happiness book. It was one of the ones before that, but he was talking about joy boosters. And one of those being exactly what you're talking about. It's writing a letter to someone else.
Yes.
That you feel like deep gratitude for, like they've
like you appreciation.
Special. Yeah. This deep appreciation. And then I love like actually going to that person if you can, or now it's beautiful. We have Zoom and we can really connect on Zoom, but reading the letter to that person and how powerful, what a gift that is, which benefits both people. I think he was saying like the hit was like 3 months of just elevated.
Yes. Joy. That's a good reminder. I did one actually for my dad a few years ago, and I haven't done one of those recently. So that's a really good reminder. And such a simple But yeah, such a fulfilling thing. There was one speaker at the summit. It was really interesting because my husband and I are celebrating our 10-year anniversary next month. And we have 2 little kids. Of course, life is busy, and we love each other deeply, but also we do take each other for granted. I mean, we made together 15 years, right? So, and it was really interesting. He was saying, this is Dr. Fred Ludskin from Stanford. He was saying about, it reminds me of what you just said. He said, with the person that's closest to you, he goes, every day they're doing so many acts of kindness for you. And the longer you're together, you notice those less. Your brain actually doesn't notice them. You notice what they're not doing. And so that really had me reflecting on, like just my husband, Jim, he does so many. And how can I go back? The first 2 years, you notice everything that your new love, you're in this honeymoon phase, but just by that attention, just like the appreciation letter of like bringing attention to what the people in your life are to you and give to you and do for you, is really, really powerful.
It is. I love hearing that. I love hearing your intention, to notice and to start giving that attention, because I do know our brains automate our partners.
Yes.
And then they just, because it makes it easier. We don't have to think that hard. Our brain's always automating things for us. So it doesn't take us, 20 minutes to remember how to tie our shoes.
Right.
And I've seen relationships seriously change when the homework given was just to have 3 appreciations before you go to bed. Yes. Of each other. Yes. And literally people coming back a week later and just being so blown away because they were no longer attuned.
Yes.
To noticing that. So what a beautiful
thing. Gave me goosebumps. Yes. And you think of absolutely. Because there is that love is there, but with all of life's challenges that are thrown at you. And it's unfortunate. The people we love the most is who I don't know if take out on is the right, you might have a better phrase for it, but they get the brunt of, the challenges and the rough sides of us. And they're the ones that are the best to us.
Right. Right. So a simple act, like you're saying, of starting to tune in again.
Yes.
And attune to our partners. And just like the choice for happiness, we can make the choice to tune in to one another.
Yeah. And I can't help but thinking you need some physical reminders, like a Post-it in the bathroom, something on the fridge, just like, what's my family doing for me today? Or,
That's so beautiful. And I love your secondary part too, of what can we do for one another? Because we know that does really pull us out of our own funk, our own, whatever the drama is or the story is that we're playing in our own minds. Yeah. So just so many good things here. I love this. We're going to have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to be circling around to this question of how does happiness serve us at work? I mean, we know how it helps us in our own lives, and yet so many people go to a work that maybe they're dispassionate about. And so when we return, we're going to be talking with Tia Graham about how do we create just more happiness at work? Why does happiness make a difference at work? And what makes a leader more effective when they are happy? All this and more when we return. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Spark. I'm Stephanie James here with Tia Graham, and we are having this just awesome conversation talking all about happiness and really the depth of happiness and the importance of happiness in our lives, not just as a fleeting emotion, but more as a state of being. I'm really hearing that. Mm-hmm. And that I love too, that we can increase our baseline for happiness. I really noticed when you said that earlier, we're not stuck. Right? If we wake up and we're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just genetic. You're not predisposed. You're partly predisposed, but then there's a lot within your control.
Yeah. Yeah. So empowering.
Yes.
Well, let's get to this, so much of your work. I know you work with tons of corporations and organizations and teaching about the importance of being a happy leader and what happiness adds to the workplace. Talk about that. Tell us more about that.
Yes. So, as I mentioned earlier, I led teams in the hotel industry for 14 years, and I became a leader of humans at a very young age, 26 years old. I was like thrown in, and all of a sudden I'm a boss of people. I had no idea what I was doing. And along the way, of course, I learned so much, and I had some incredibly inspiring motivational leaders. And I also had extremely toxic, negative leaders. And so, a big inspiration for my company and also my new book called Be a Happy Leader was because I know, and the research shows that 2/3 of leaders are disengaged in the United States. It's a lot of unhappiness trickling down, corporate America. So that was one big motivation. And then also, all of the research, from the science of happiness to neuroscience, coaching, what I learned over in Denmark, I was like, okay, people need to know this information. And so there is a tremendous amount of research, and more is coming out every single day, that shows the impact that happiness has at work. So huge levers where there's big bodies of research behind it is when people are happy while they're working, they're more productive. So they get more done while they're working. They're more creative and innovative. So this is the work of Dr. Barbara Fredrickson. It's the broaden and build theory. So we literally see more possibilities, more options. Our brains are wider, and we have this zoomed out lens. And of course, in business, creativity and innovation is vital to stay alive because the world's changing so fast. So happiness is connected to creativity. It's also connected to sales and business growth. So this is Sean Acor's research from Harvard that when salespeople are feeling positive, they will sell up to 37% more than someone who's feeling neutral or negative. So it drives revenue. Happy employees who are working and they have an engaged boss are going to not only be more productive and motivated, but they're going to stay. So everyone's been talking about the Great Resignation. You don't leave companies, you leave people. So it directly ties into the bottom line because turnover is extremely expensive for companies, recruiting, hiring, training, all of it. And so just that retention piece. And then also when people are happy at work, people that are in customer service, not only sales, but taking people that directly interact with customers, then that transfers into customer happiness and customer loyalty, which then drives revenue. So, when I am talking to organizations about Arrive at Happy, I say, I help your business grow. We are going to grow the revenue. We are going to grow the profit. We're going to do it with this vehicle of happiness. But that's really what it does. And, I'm a sales and marketing person, so I'm very much as passionate about growing business, as I am about the happiness piece. And so from a leadership perspective, many, I don't know the exact percentage, but the majority of leaders, whether you're a supervisor or, a CEO, the majority of leaders around the globe have not been taught the research-based methods on how to increase experienced happiness while working. That is a model, that there's a new class at Harvard University called Positive Leadership. It's new. This class is not, so it's like Harvard you think is leading, that's a new class. Arthur Brooks is teaching that. So it's coming, but it's a shift, right? And there's still a lot of people out there that believe happiness doesn't belong in the work. Happiness is what you do on the weekend. Work is work. So it's also this shift of mindset, but thankfully the younger generations and people have had this chance. It's just been this great reset of, do I want to work for this toxic boss? Do I want to work 80 hours a week? No, life is short. I've seen that with the pandemic. So that's a silver lining that it has forced organizations to look at the whole area of human well-being and how does work play a part into human well-being.
Beautiful. Yes. I mean, and we can all think about that for ourselves when we've had, like you were saying, toxic bosses or, I think people that made us feel like work just needed to be work.
Yeah.
And wow. And it closes the system down. It's like it closes down people's energy system.
Yes. Yes.
And it's amazing to me. And when you have someone that's leading an organization who's positive and, and then they're lifting you up, and then it creates that environment where other people are also, it's like everyone starts thriving. It's like the whole place starts vibrating at this different level.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's research that shows it connects to how engaged people are, their vitality, and that actually they can achieve their full potential while working, right? So if you have an unhappy leader, there's a stifling that's happening. People are not reaching their full potential, which then of course affects the organization, So, but of course, leadership is difficult. And I think when you were talking, another thing came to mind is people feeling burnt out, that might not even be the boss. That could just be how much you're working. Maybe you're not taking care of yourself, but being really burnt out or being chronically stressed you might have a great boss, but if you're not sleeping enough and you're not exercising, so that self-care piece is also really important, because you need to have the energy to then, be creative, be productive, and all of that. But we definitely have a culture of overwork, which is challenging for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want you to hold up your book again, Tia, because I want everybody to be able to.
It's brand new. Just came out. It's a bestseller on Amazon.
Yay.
Yes. So in here, I have the 8 steps to be a happy leader. I share a lot of personal stories. It's full of research. You can get it anywhere you buy books, but I'm hoping it reaches as many leaders around the globe as possible.
Oh, fantastic. Oh my gosh. Well, I am so thrilled that we've had this time together. And I mean, I could just keep talking to you for hours. This is such an awesome topic, and you are such a light. I'm curious, if you had to leave the audience with an essential message that you want them to take with them, what would that be?
Oh, the essential message I want to leave everyone with is that every day when you wake up, remember that you are mortal. Remember that tomorrow's not a given, that just waking up and breathing is such a miracle, and give yourself permission to be a human being. That's the ups and downs, but that's been key in my life, is being very aware that life is extremely precious. So that's the message I'll leave people with.
Beautiful. Tia Graham, where can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So my website has everything. It's arriveathappy.com. Also my Instagram is arriveathappy. And I also have a weekly YouTube channel, LinkedIn, of course, Facebook. I just started TikTok. Everyone's like, Tia, you got to get on TikTok. I'm like, okay, fine. So I'll spread happiness on TikTok. Like another social media channel. But yeah, those are the main ways. And my book and everything is on arriveathappy.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of The Spark.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to The Spark with Stephanie James. Remember that you already have what you need to live a life that is fully lit and fully alive. You're already holding the flame. Now it's time to ignite your best life. Learn more at stephaniejames.world. That's stephaniejames.world. And tune in next week at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, only on transformationtalkradio.com. Shine on!